"Careful, brute, you'll break my back," the alien woman shouted while he treated her wound. The planet stretched endlessly, a wild and untamed world of misty valleys and towering forests with trees that shimmered faintly in the twilight. Captain Elias Kane had walked many worlds in his life, but none like this. The air was thick and humid, carrying the scent of damp earth and strange flowers that glowed softly in the dark. His boots sank slightly into the mossy ground as he moved carefully, scanning the surroundings for anything unusual. As a medic and explorer, he had learned long ago to expect the unexpected, and this planet was full of it. Elias had been sent to deliver supplies to a distant research outpost, a routine mission by his standards, but the planet seemed anything but routine. Strange sounds echoed from the canopy above, rustling leaves and distant calls that no human ear had ever heard before. He tightened the strap of his pack, adjusting the small medkit at his side. It was a quiet walk at first, just him and the subtle hum of the forest. But then a sharp, anguished shout broke the stillness. It was a voice, alien yet unmistakably female, filled with both pain and surprise. Elias froze, listening. The cry came again, closer this time. His instincts kicked in immediately. He did not hesitate. Moving cautiously, he followed the sound, pushing through the thick undergrowth. His eyes soon caught sight of her, a figure struggling beneath a fallen tree limb. Her skin shimmered faintly with a soft, luminescent glow, and her delicate frame was pinned awkwardly. Her hair, like strands of silver light, spilled around her shoulders. She was clearly injured, her arm bent at an odd angle, a dark streak of blood staining the pale glow of her skin. "Help, please," she gasped, trying to push the heavy branch off herself. But it was clear she could not. Her delicate form and her visible strength were at odds, a combination of grace and fragility that made her seem almost unreal. Elias stepped forward carefully. "Hold still," he said, his voice calm and steady. He had no idea how she would react, but he had been trained for unexpected rescues. "I'm a medic. I can help you." She glared at him with eyes the color of molten silver, sharp and untrusting. "Careful, brute, you'll break my back," she shouted, even as she twisted slightly, testing him, testing whether he was dangerous. Her tone was sharp, and yet there was a thread of desperation woven through it. Elias froze for a moment, unsure whether to laugh or be offended. Instead, he knelt beside her, careful not to make sudden movements. "I promise I won't. I just need to get you free," he said softly, scanning the situation. The branch was heavy, but not beyond human strength if leveraged properly. He reached for a nearby rock and wedged it to create leverage. "Okay, just a little more, almost there," he murmured as he pressed gently against the limb. The alien woman grunted in protest at the pressure, her body tensing. "Careful," she cried again. "Do not think you can handle me like a child." Despite her warning, there was no way for her to free herself alone. Elias smiled faintly, ignoring her dramatic words. "I'm not handling you like a child. I'm helping you," he said, trying to keep her calm while he worked. After a few tense moments, the branch shifted, and she was able to wriggle free enough to roll out from underneath. She collapsed to the ground, panting and clutching her arm. Elias immediately examined her injury. Her arm was badly bruised, with a cut across the shoulder that would need cleaning and dressing. He carefully pulled his medkit closer, opening it with meticulous hands. "Stay still," he instructed. "This will sting a little, but it's necessary." She glared at him again, trying to sit upright. "I do not need your assistance. I can heal myself," she said, but Elias could see that her voice was weak, strained with pain. He gently laid a hand on her shoulder to steady her, and she recoiled slightly, her body tense. "Careful, brute," she hissed, echoing her earlier warning. Elias chuckled softly. "I'm being careful," he said, his voice warm. "I won't hurt you." Gingerly, he cleaned the wound using sterile wipes, carefully dabbing the blood away. He had to work slowly. Her skin was delicate, and the glow that covered her body made it clear that it would be sensitive to touch. Every movement was met with a sharp intake of breath from her. "Do you always have to be so strong?" she muttered. Elias smiled, trying to lighten the mood. "I try to control it," he replied. "Sometimes my strength surprises me too." Her eyes narrowed, but there was the faintest twitch of amusement at the corner of her mouth. Elias could not help noticing her tension slowly easing. Trust, he knew, came slowly, especially with someone who had just been hurt and trapped. "We need to make sure this does not get infected," he said, pulling a small bandage from his kit. "I'll wrap it carefully." "Careful, brute, do not crush me," she warned, her tone sharp but with a hint of resignation. Elias chuckled again. "Understood, I can be gentle." He wrapped the wound slowly, explaining each step as he worked. She listened reluctantly, asking occasional questions about his species and his knowledge. Elias found himself explaining simple things about human medicine and biology, showing her that humans were not merely physical beings but capable of precision, care, and thoughtfulness. Her eyes, at first sharp with suspicion, began to soften. There was curiosity there, the spark of wonder at a being so different from her own kind, yet so patient and competent. Once the wound was secured, he sat back and examined her carefully. "You should rest for a moment," he advised. "The pain will ease and you need strength if we are to move." She looked away, hesitating, clearly reluctant to show weakness. Elias simply nodded and waited, giving her space while remaining nearby. Finally she spoke, her voice quieter than before. "You are not like the others," she admitted. "Most humans would have, I do not know, ignored me or worse." Elias nodded. "Humans are not perfect," he said honestly, "but I believe helping each other is the right thing to do." There was sincerity in his words, and she could see it in his eyes. It was a simple truth, yet a foreign one to her experiences. She had learned caution, suspicion, and self-reliance, but never trust in strangers. As the minutes passed, Elias noticed subtle signs around them: broken branches, footprints in the soft moss, and the occasional faint shimmer in the distance. He realized she had been running from someone or something. "Were you being followed?" he asked gently. She flinched slightly, as if the idea of being exposed was painful. She hesitated before shaking her head, a small act of defiance. "No, I escaped," she said. Her voice carried both pride and fear. Elias nodded, understanding. Some stories were not easily shared. He decided to move them to a safer location. Using his human strength and careful handling, he helped her to her feet. She teetered slightly and he caught her without pressure. "See," he said lightly, "I didn't break you." She glared at him, unamused, but there was a faint twitch of a smile on her lips. "Careful, brute," she repeated almost reluctantly. Elias laughed softly. "Always." The path through the forest was slow. Every step required caution, not only because of her injury, but because the terrain was unfamiliar and unpredictable. Elias had learned to adapt quickly, reading the environment, identifying edible plants, water sources, and safe paths. Lyra observed him silently at first, her gaze sharp, as if studying a new species entirely. She was clearly impressed, even if she refused to admit it. Eventually, they reached a small clearing bathed in the soft glow of bioluminescent fungi. It was quiet and protected, a natural shelter from the outside world. Elias gestured for her to sit while he prepared a small makeshift camp. She did not resist this time, her trust in him growing, even if slowly. As he tended to the site, gathering materials and ensuring they had clean water, she studied him, curiosity replacing suspicion. Her species prized intelligence and skill, and she could recognize both in him. It was a silent acknowledgement of his worth. Hours passed as Elias prepared food and ensured her comfort. They spoke little, mostly observing the forest around them, listening to the strange sounds of alien creatures in the distance. Slowly, the tension between them eased, replaced by a tentative connection. Elias realized that this alien woman, so different from anyone he had ever met, had a strength and resilience that rivaled his own. but she also had fragility, both physical and emotional, that demanded care. By the time the alien sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the forest floor, a quiet understanding had formed between them. She no longer flinched at his presence, though she still teased him. "Careful, brute," she said once more, this time almost fondly. Elias smiled, his eyes reflecting the soft light of the fungi. "I am always careful," he replied gently. It was not just about her back or the injury or the danger, it was about trust. And trust, he knew, was the first step toward friendship or perhaps something deeper. As night settled over the planet, the two sat together in silence, a human and an alien, connected by circumstance and compassion. The forest around them was alive with the whispers of unseen creatures, yet there was peace in that moment. Elias felt a quiet sense of purpose, knowing that he had found someone worth protecting, not out of duty, but out of simple human empathy. And Lyra, for the first time in a long while, allowed herself to feel that someone, even a human, could be gentle and trustworthy. The forest around them was alive with the soft hum of alien insects and the occasional rustle of unseen creatures. The light from the bioluminescent fungi painted the clearing in gentle blues and purples, giving everything a dreamlike quality. Elias moved carefully, checking the perimeter, making sure the area was safe. Lyra watched him, her luminous eyes following every motion, her arms still carefully wrapped around her injured side. Despite her initial reluctance, she did not protest his presence. She seemed to sense the quiet assurance in his movements. Elias worked on gathering materials for a more permanent resting place. He arranged soft moss and leaves to make a bed, placed a few sturdy branches as a protective barrier, and even found a small source of fresh water trickling from a nearby rock formation. Lyra observed silently, occasionally making a comment about the methods he used. "Humans think of comfort before danger," she said, her voice a mixture of surprise and admiration. "Strange, but effective." Elias smiled. "Comfort keeps you strong," he replied. "A weak body cannot handle danger, no matter how clever the mind is." Lyra hesitated for a moment, then lowered herself onto the makeshift bed. She winced as she adjusted her arm. Elias immediately knelt beside her. "Careful," she said sharply, though the sharpness had less bite than before. "I am careful, not fragile," she added. Elias nodded. "I know, but even the strongest need care sometimes." She didn't respond immediately, only letting him inspect her wound again. He cleaned it gently, reapplying a fresh dressing. Her eyes softened slightly, watching the meticulous movements of his hands. There was trust there now, quiet but real. They settled into an uneasy calm. The forest around them was quiet, save for the occasional night bird or rustling of leaves. Lyra studied Elias with a careful, almost scientific gaze. "Your species is strange," she remarked. "You are soft yet strong, gentle yet persistent." "You are unpredictable," Elias chuckled. "I guess that is one way to describe humans," he said. "Unpredictable and full of surprises." She narrowed her eyes, considering his words. "Unpredictable, yes. Perhaps that is why you survive in so many worlds." There was respect in her voice now, a recognition of the adaptability she saw in him. As the night deepened, Elias cooked a small meal using supplies from his pack. The smell of warm food wafted through the air and Lyra's stomach growled softly. She looked at him, slightly embarrassed. "Your species eats differently from mine," she said. "Strange, but appealing." Elias laughed. "Try it. It might taste better than it smells." Tentatively, she sampled the food. Her eyes widened in surprise at the flavor. "This is pleasing," she admitted. "I did not expect such simple things to bring comfort." Elias smiled, watching her enjoy the meal. It was a small moment, but it brought them closer, bridging the gap between species through something as simple as shared sustenance. After the meal, they sat by the small fire Elias had made. He showed her how to maintain the flames, explaining that warmth and light were not just for comfort, they were protection against the unknown. Lyra listened, absorbing every word. "You humans find ways to control your environment," she said thoughtfully. "In my culture, we rely on instinct and knowledge, but you create tools and strategies that extend your natural abilities." Elias nodded. "We have to. It is how we survive." There was a pause as she considered this. "Perhaps there is merit in your ways," she said finally, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. The night wore on, and Elias noticed subtle changes in her demeanor. The tension in her body had lessened, and her eyes no longer darted nervously at every sound. She still moved cautiously, but there was a willingness to engage, to observe, and even to participate in the small routines he established. He saw it as progress, trust forming through shared experience. As they talked quietly, Lyra began to share fragments of her life. She spoke of her world, a place of advanced civilizations, where intellect and strategy often outweighed compassion and spontaneity. She had grown up learning to rely on herself, to trust few, and to protect her knowledge at all costs. Yet here with Elias she found herself reconsidering the value of openness, of allowing someone to help. "I am not used to this," she admitted quietly, "to allow someone in to rely on them." Elias nodded. "It is not easy," he said, "but it is worth it. Connection makes life stronger." She considered his words, the idea foreign yet appealing. She had spent so long on the defensive, yet here was someone who acted without expectation, without demand, simply out of care. The following morning, Elias helped her stretch her arm gently, showing her exercises to prevent stiffness and improve healing. She protested at first, then reluctantly followed his instructions. "Careful, brute, do not overestimate your skill," she said with a teasing edge, though it was clear she appreciated his guidance. Elias smiled. "I am always careful, you will see." Over the next few days, their routines became familiar. Elias taught her simple human practices, how to prepare basic meals, how to purify water, and how to navigate the terrain using natural markers. In turn, Lyra taught him about the forest, how to read the shapes of leaves for signs of water, how to listen for subtle animal calls that indicated safety or danger, and how to move silently without disturbing the environment. They learned from each other, each recognizing the strengths of the other species. Their conversations often turned to humor, a bridge between differences. Lyra teased Elias for the awkward way humans carried heavy objects or for their tendency to underestimate subtle dangers. Elias, in turn, joked about her dramatic reactions to minor discomforts. "Careful, brute," she would say in mock warning, and he would respond with exaggerated gentleness, prompting a reluctant laugh from her. These small exchanges built a foundation of camaraderie, trust, and a unique kind of friendship that transcended species boundaries. One afternoon, as they were walking through a narrow valley, Elias noticed something unusual: faint markings on the rocks and moss, signs that someone or something had passed this way recently. He gestured for Lyra to stop. She examined the markings quickly, her expression tense. "They are trackers," she said quietly. "They follow me always." Elias frowned. "Then we need to be careful," he said. "We can't rush, but we must stay ahead." Lyra nodded, appreciating his caution. "Your methods are different from mine," she said, "but effective." Elias smiled. "Humans rely on observation, patience, and improvisation," he explained. "Sometimes the smallest details make the biggest difference." She considered his words thoughtfully, realizing that his approach combined intellect with instinct in a way her people rarely used. As days passed, the bond between them grew. Lyra no longer flinched at his touch. She allowed him to help her, not just with her injury, but with navigating the forest and understanding her surroundings. Elias noticed that she began to anticipate his actions, adjusting to his methods rather than resisting them. Trust was no longer just tentative, it was active and reciprocal. They communicated through words, gestures, and shared glances, a silent understanding that transcended the need for constant speech. During one quiet evening, Lyra spoke softly, almost to herself. I did not expect to find a human like this, someone who sees not only the body but the mind and heart as well. Elias looked at her, his expression calm and kind. Humans are capable of much, he said. We can surprise even ourselves. She nodded slowly, absorbing his words. For the first time, she allowed herself to consider the possibility that not all humans were unpredictable or dangerous. Some could be allies, companions, even friends. Their nights were spent under the glow of the fungi, talking and observing the stars. Lyra marveled at the human perspective on exploration, the way Elias found patterns and connections that she had never considered. He, in turn, was fascinated by her knowledge of the ecosystem, the precision of her movements, and the clarity of her mind. They exchanged knowledge freely, a mutual respect forming that transcended language and culture. One morning, Elias prepared a small meal and presented it to her. She took it cautiously, then tasted it. Her eyes widened in pleasant surprise. "This is good," she said. "Better than I expected." Elias smiled. "It's the thought that counts," he said lightly. "Humans often find joy in small things." She considered that, the glow of her skin softening. "Perhaps there is wisdom in your ways," she admitted. Elias nodded. Sometimes, the simplest methods are the most effective. As the days blended into one another, Lyra's injury healed steadily, thanks to Elia's careful treatment and her own cautious movements. Her strength returned, but so did a new perspective, an appreciation for humans, not as fragile or primitive but as adaptable, resourceful, and compassionate. She began to see Elias not just as a caretaker, but as a companion, someone whose presence brought security and understanding in a world that had often been harsh and unforgiving. By the end of the second week, they were no longer strangers. They moved through the forest with a quiet confidence, relying on each other's skills and instincts. Elias had proven that human ingenuity and care could match her precision and agility. Lyra had shown him ways of seeing and understanding that no human instruction could provide. Together, they had created a balance, a partnership born of necessity but strengthened by trust and mutual respect. As they prepared to rest one evening, Lyra looked at Elias with a mixture of fondness and amusement. "Careful brute, do not think your strength alone will carry you through everything," she said, her tone teasing but warm. Elias laughed softly, shaking his head. "I am always careful," he replied. "But it is good to have a reminder from time to time." She nodded, her glow reflecting the soft light of the fungi, a silent acknowledgement of the bond that had formed between them. In that moment, the forest seemed to hold its breath. Two very different beings from entirely different worlds had found common ground. Not through force, not through dominance, but through care, patience, and understanding. Elias realized that helping her had become more than a duty. It was a connection, a bridge between worlds, and the beginning of a story neither of them could have anticipated. The sun rose slowly over the horizon, painting the forest in warm shades of gold and orange. The soft glow reflected on Lyra's skin, making her appear almost ethereal as she stretched carefully, testing the strength in her recovering arm. Elias watched her with quiet approval. She had come a long way from the tense, wary alien he had found under the fallen branch weeks ago. Now, though cautious, she moved with a grace and confidence that matched her species' reputation. "Morning," Elias said gently, breaking the silence. He had already packed a small breakfast of fruits and edible leaves he had discovered in the forest, some prepared by human methods, some raw. "You slept well." Lyra adjusted her posture, wincing slightly as she moved. "Well enough," she said softly. "Better than expected, thanks to your careful treatment." She glanced at him, the familiar tease in her voice. "Careful brute, do not think your skill alone can mend everything." Elias smiled, appreciating the subtle humor. "I'll take that as a compliment," he said. "Let's eat before we move." The two shared the simple meal quietly, the soft rustle of leaves and distant bird calls providing a gentle soundtrack. Despite the peaceful moment, Elia's mind was alert. He had noticed traces around their camp, subtle footprints, bent branches, the faint shimmer of disturbed moss that hinted someone or something had passed nearby recently. Lyra sensed it too, her gaze sharp as she scanned the surroundings. "They are close," she whispered, her voice tense. "Those who pursue me, they track always." Elias nodded. "Then we need to be careful. We cannot let them catch up." Lyra rose, testing the strength in her legs and arms. "We move slowly," she instructed. "Haste brings danger. Patience brings safety." Elias agreed. "Patience," he repeated. "Then we move together step by step." As they ventured through the forest, Elias marveled at how Lyra read the environment. She pointed out subtle signs of water under the soil, paths that would allow them to move silently, and areas where natural cover could shield them from prying eyes. In turn, he used his human ingenuity to modify simple tools and create small distractions if needed, like placing loose branches to mislead anyone following them, or using reflective surfaces to signal, without revealing their exact location. Their journey was slow but steady. The bond between them grew stronger with every step, every shared observation. Lyra's initial skepticism had softened into curiosity and quiet admiration. She began to recognize Elias not only as a capable human, but as a partner, someone whose presence brought security and understanding in a world that had often been harsh and unforgiving. One afternoon, they came across a narrow canyon with a small stream running through it. The walls of the canyon were steep, covered in moss and slippery in places. Elias looked at the path ahead. "We can't go around. We need to cross," he said, evaluating the terrain. Lyra nodded, moving ahead with careful steps. "Follow my lead," she instructed. "Watch your footing, human." Elias followed, placing his feet carefully and using a branch for support. Lyra moved with her usual grace, but she paused occasionally to guide him, pointing out areas that could be dangerous. "Careful, brute, this stone will slide," she warned. Elias laughed softly. "Noted," he replied, adjusting his weight. The crossing was slow, but their teamwork allowed them to navigate the treacherous path without incident. Once they reached the other side, Lyra allowed herself a small smile. "Your species is adaptable," she said thoughtfully. "I underestimated you." Elias shrugged lightly. "We surprise ourselves sometimes. That's how we survive." She studied him for a moment, her gaze softening. "Perhaps there is value in your unpredictability," she admitted. "It complements my precision." As they continued, Lyra began to share fragments of her story. She spoke of her world, a planet of knowledge and intellect where careful planning often outweighed action. She had grown up learning to rely on her wits, her strength, and her agility, but trust was a rare commodity. She had escaped from those who sought her for knowledge she possessed, knowledge that could prevent a conflict in her civilization if used wisely. Elias listened attentively, understanding the weight she carried without pressing for details she was not ready to share. "The world I come from is dangerous," she said quietly. "Not in the way your humans think of danger. It is subtle, calculated. Every action, every word can have consequences." Elias nodded. "Then you understand the need for caution. But even in calculated worlds, kindness and trust can make a difference." She looked at him, considering his words carefully. "You speak as if human compassion has power," she said softly. "Perhaps it does." Their journey brought them to a dense grove filled with tall, twisted trees whose roots created a natural labyrinth. Lyra moved ahead, signaling Elias to follow carefully. "The path here is treacherous," she whispered. "One wrong step and you could fall or get trapped." Elias observed the terrain, noting the patterns of roots and stones, then mirrored her movements. Together they navigated the grove, moving silently, each step coordinated and precise. As they rested briefly, Lyra turned to Elias. "You are not like the others I have encountered," she said, her voice quieter than usual. "Most humans I have seen are brash, direct, impatient." "You are not," Elias smiled. "I guess I am a bit different. I try to see things fully before acting." She nodded, a small smile forming. "Then perhaps there is hope in your species. You are reliable." Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden rustle in the foliage nearby. Both froze, listening. Elias held his breath, ready to assess the situation. Lyra's body tensed, her instincts alert. A small group of harmless forest creatures appeared, scurrying past them and disappearing into the undergrowth. Lyra relaxed slightly, though her vigilance remained. "Even the smallest signs matter," she said. "You are learning quickly." Elias nodded. "Observation is key. Every detail counts." The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the forest floor. Elias suggested they make camp for the night, and Lyra agreed. This time, they chose a location near a small waterfall, the sound of cascading water providing a natural shield against any distant observers. Elias prepared a soft resting area for Lyra, using leaves, moss, and branches to create a comfortable bed. She lay down cautiously, testing the arrangement before settling. "You are considerate," she remarked, her tone carrying faint warmth. They shared a quiet meal, again relying on a combination of human-prepared items and natural finds. Lyra had begun to appreciate the simplicity of human meals, their ability to bring comfort in the middle of uncertainty. They talked softly about their respective worlds, sharing small details of culture, daily routines, and values. Elias explained how humans adapted to different environments, how compassion and cooperation often determined survival. Lyra shared lessons from her civilization, the importance of knowledge, patience, and careful observation. Through these exchanges, Elias noticed subtle changes in Lyra's behavior. She no longer flinched at his touch, and she allowed herself to be guided without protest. She began to anticipate his movements, understanding his methods and adjusting accordingly. Trust had grown into a quiet partnership, built on shared experience, mutual respect, and a recognition of each other's strengths. The following morning, they continued their journey, navigating rivers and climbing rocky slopes. Elias used his human ingenuity to create makeshift tools, while Lyra provided guidance on safe routes and hidden paths. Their teamwork became seamless, a blend of human adaptability and alien precision. As they traveled, Elias saw her slowly opening up, sharing her thoughts, fears, and hopes. He realized that their partnership had become more than survival. It was a true collaboration, each learning from the other. One afternoon, as they rested near a sparkling lake, Lyra spoke softly. "I have always relied on myself," she said. "Trust is rare among my people. Yet here with you, I feel a sense of safety I have not known in a long time." Elias looked at her, understanding the weight of her words. "It takes courage to trust," he said gently, "but it is worth it. Together we are stronger than apart." She nodded, a quiet acknowledgement of the bond that had formed. Their journey continued, each day bringing new challenges, small adventures, and lessons. They navigated hidden caves, observed strange creatures, and found natural sources of food and water. Each success, each small victory, reinforced their trust and respect. Lyra began to see Elias not just as a human, but as a reliable partner, capable of ingenuity, courage, and empathy. One evening, as they prepared to rest, Lyra turned to him with a playful smile. "Careful brute, do not think your strength alone will carry you through everything," she teased, echoing her familiar line. Elias laughed softly. "I am always careful," he replied. "But reminders are useful." She nodded, the faint glow of her skin reflecting the soft light of the setting sun. It was a small moment, but it symbolized the growing bond between them, a bond forged through patience, respect, and shared experience. As night fell, Elias and Lyra lay under the stars, the gentle sounds of the forest around them. They spoke softly, exchanging thoughts, dreams, and reflections. Elias realized that helping her had become more than a duty. It was a connection, a partnership, a bridge between two very different worlds. And Lyra, for the first time, allowed herself to trust a human fully, appreciating not only his skill and care but the sincerity of his heart. The forest around them seemed to hum with life, yet within their small clearing there was peace. Two beings from distant worlds, bound by circumstance and choice, had found common ground. Elias felt a quiet pride in their progress, and Lyra felt a rare comfort in allowing someone else into her life. They were no longer merely survivor and wounded alien. They were partners, friends, and allies, ready to face whatever the next steps of their journey might bring. The morning sun filtered through the dense canopy, casting streaks of light across the forest floor. Elias and Lyra had traveled for several days, moving carefully through the alien terrain. The forest had grown familiar to them, the subtle signs of water, the hidden paths, and the sounds that indicated both danger and safety. Yet, despite their careful navigation, Elias could sense that something had changed. The faint traces of movement they had noticed before were becoming more frequent. The air carried an unfamiliar tension, and Lyra's usually calm movements were sharper, more alert. "They are close," Lyra whispered, her silver eyes scanning the trees. Her arm, now almost healed, was still protected, but her body had regained its agility. Elias nodded, adjusting his pack and scanning the area as well. "We'll stay ahead of them," he said. Careful and deliberate, step by step. Lyra glanced at him, a hint of admiration in her gaze. "Your methods, your patience is unlike any human I have met," she said softly. "It is effective." They continued through the forest, their steps synchronized. Elias had learned to read Lyra's subtle signals, slight pauses, shifts in weight, changes in her gaze that indicated potential obstacles or opportunities. He, in turn, had taught her to watch for human-made markers, the way a branch could be placed to mislead trackers, how to use reflective surfaces to signal without revealing their exact location. Together they formed a seamless team, a combination of alien precision and human ingenuity. By midday, they reached a narrow valley, its floor carpeted with soft moss and small flowering plants. A stream meandered through it, its waters clear and cool. Elias suggested they rest briefly and replenish their water supply. Lyra agreed, kneeling to drink from the stream while Elias checked their surroundings. The air felt heavier here, as if the forest itself were holding its breath. Elias' instincts told him that this was not just another stretch of terrain, it was a potential point where they could be observed. As they rested, Lyra finally opened up more about her situation. "My people value knowledge above all," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "I possess information that could prevent conflict in my civilization, but those who seek it do not wish to use it wisely. They want control." Elias listened intently, understanding the gravity of her words without pressing for more than she was willing to share. "Then we need to keep moving," he said gently. "Step by step, we'll find a way to safety." Lyra nodded, her usual guarded demeanor softened by trust. They continued their journey, navigating the winding paths of the valley. Elias used his human ingenuity to create simple tools that would aid them. A lightweight bridge of intertwined vines to cross a narrow stream, markers to help retrace their steps, and small camouflage nets to blend into the environment if needed. Lyra observed closely, impressed by his resourcefulness. "Humans, you adapt quickly," she remarked. "Your methods, they complement my instincts." Elias smiled. "That's the goal. Together, we cover each other's strengths and weaknesses." The forest began to change as they moved further. The trees grew taller and closer together, their thick canopies blocking most of the sunlight. Strange flowers with luminous petals glowed faintly in the dim light, casting a soft, otherworldly glow. The air was cooler, filled with the scent of damp earth and unknown flora. Elias noted the subtle differences, pointing out safe areas to rest and potential hazards hidden among the roots and rocks. Lyra followed his guidance, her trust in his judgment evident in the way she moved alongside him. Suddenly, they heard a faint rustle behind them. Elias froze, signaling Lyra to stop. She tensed, her eyes scanning the forest for movement. "Trackers," she whispered. "They are near." Elias nodded, keeping his voice calm. "We need to move carefully, slow and silent." They advanced cautiously, using the terrain to their advantage, stepping lightly on moss-covered ground and avoiding broken branches that could betray their presence. The next obstacle was a rocky outcrop that rose sharply from the valley floor. Climbing it would be challenging, but it offered a vantage point from which they could observe the area. Elias examined the rocks, noting natural handholds and ledges. "We can climb here," he said. "But we must go slowly." Lyra moved first, her body agile and precise. Elias followed, using his human strength and careful technique to ascend without misstep. At the top, they paused, catching their breath and surveying the landscape. From the vantage point, they could see the valley stretching beyond, the dense forest interspersed with clearings. Elias spotted faint movement in the distance, tracks that indicated someone had passed through recently. "They are following," he said softly. Lyra nodded, her expression tense but focused. "We cannot outrun them forever," she said. "We must find a strategy." Elias considered this. "Then we will use the environment, our knowledge, and our patience. We will stay ahead." They descended carefully and continued their journey, choosing paths that offered natural cover and opportunities to observe without being seen. Elias used reflective surfaces and natural markers to signal silently to Lyra, guiding her through tricky areas and alerting her to potential hazards. Lyra's instincts, combined with Elias' methods, allowed them to move efficiently and safely. The pursuit was relentless but unseen, a shadow in the forest that required vigilance and strategy rather than confrontation. As night fell, they reached a hidden grove near a waterfall. The sound of cascading water provided a natural shield, masking their presence from distant trackers. Elias prepared a resting area using soft moss, leaves, and branches. Lyra tested the arrangement carefully before settling, her body finally relaxed after the tense day. "You are thorough," she said, her tone carrying faint warmth. "I am beginning to understand human methods." Elias smiled. "It is a combination of observation, care, and patience. You have taught me much as well." Over the next few days, their journey continued through the dense forest. They crossed streams, navigated rocky slopes, and observed strange creatures that moved silently among the trees. Each challenge reinforced their teamwork. Elias' human adaptability complemented Lyra's precision and instinct, allowing them to overcome obstacles without conflict. They shared knowledge freely, learning from each other and strengthening their bond. One afternoon, they came across a natural bridge of intertwined vines stretching over a deep ravine. The gap was too wide to jump, and the drop was too dangerous to risk. Elias examined the vines, testing their strength and flexibility. "We can cross carefully," he said. "Step by step, we will make it." Lyra studied the bridge, her confidence in her own agility evident. "We move together," she said, "careful but swift." They crossed slowly, each step deliberate, supporting each other when needed. The sense of accomplishment brought a rare moment of levity. "Careful, brute, do not let me fall," Lyra teased, echoing her familiar line. Elias laughed. "I've got you," he replied. As they continued, Lyra began to share more about her culture and her people. She spoke of civilizations built on knowledge, where every action had consequences and trust was hard-earned. Elias listened, fascinated by the precision and care inherent in her world. In turn, he shared stories of human resilience, the way humans adapted to diverse environments, and the value they placed on empathy and cooperation. The exchange deepened their understanding of each other, creating a bridge between two very different worlds. Their nights were spent under the soft glow of bioluminescent plants, talking quietly about hopes, dreams, and strategies for remaining safe. Elias taught Lyra simple human practices for survival and comfort, while she shared advanced observation techniques and methods of moving silently. Each night reinforced their partnership, and each day brought new lessons in trust, patience, and cooperation. Eventually, they reached a cliffside that overlooked a vast plain. In the distance, a small structure glimmered, a hidden shuttle, a potential means of escape from the forest and the pursuers. Elias and Lyra paused, assessing the safest path to reach it. "There," Lyra said, pointing toward the shuttle. "It is our chance." Elias nodded, considering the terrain. "We move carefully, step by step, using all we have learned." Their journey to the shuttle was tense but methodical. They avoided open spaces, using cover and natural obstacles to remain unseen. Elias' ingenuity and Lyra's agility allowed them to move efficiently, anticipating hazards and finding the safest routes. By the time they reached the shuttle, exhaustion mixed with relief. They had navigated the forest, stayed ahead of their pursuers, and learned to rely on each other completely. As they prepared to board, Lyra turned to Elias, her expression soft and sincere. "I did not expect to find a human like you," she said. "One who is patient, careful, and willing to trust." Elias smiled. "It is not just about being human," he said. "It is about caring, observing, and adapting. We have learned from each other." She nodded, her eyes reflecting a rare warmth. "Yes, we have." The shuttle hummed to life, its engines quiet but powerful. As they lifted off, leaving the forest and its dangers behind, Elias and Lyra shared a moment of quiet reflection. They had faced uncertainty, relied on each other's strengths, and emerged stronger for it. Their bond had grown beyond survival. It was trust, respect, and a shared sense of purpose. From the window of the shuttle, Lyra watched the forest shrink beneath them. "Perhaps there is hope," she whispered. Elias glanced at her, smiling. "There is always hope, as long as we keep moving forward, careful, step by step together." The journey was far from over, but for the first time, both felt confident that together they could face whatever came next. The forest, the pursuit, the unknown, all of it had been a test of patience, ingenuity, and trust. And they had passed, side by side. The shuttle glided silently through the sky, leaving the dense forest far below. Elias and Lyra sat side by side, the hum of the engines a gentle constant beneath them. For the first time in weeks, there was no immediate threat pressing on them. The forest, the trackers, and the challenges of survival seemed like distant memories, though the lessons they carried were very real. Lyra looked out the window, her luminous skin reflecting the soft interior light of the shuttle. "I did not expect it to end this way," she said softly, almost to herself. "I thought I would always be running, always hiding, but now I feel relief." Elias turned to her with a reassuring smile. "You don't have to run anymore. We found a safe path, and together we handled everything the forest and its dangers threw at us." She nodded, but there was still a hint of uncertainty in her eyes. "You humans, you have a strange strength," she said thoughtfully. "Not just physical, but emotional. You can be persistent without being harsh. You can care without demanding. I have not seen that before." Elias chuckled softly. "It's what makes humans survive in so many worlds. We adapt, we empathize, and we persist." Lyra looked at him for a long moment, her gaze curious and appreciative. "Perhaps that is why I survived," she admitted. "Because you were not just strong, you were careful, patient, and understanding." Elias shook his head lightly. "We survived together. That is the key. You taught me as much as I taught you. Your precision, observation, and instincts guided us as much as my human methods did." She gave a small smile, the first fully relaxed one since their journey began. As the shuttle moved farther from the forest, the landscape below began to change. The dense, alien wilderness gave way to rolling hills, scattered settlements, and eventually the faint outlines of a city in the distance. Elias adjusted their course, aiming for a safe landing zone that would allow them to reach civilization without encountering anyone who might still be pursuing Lyra. She watched him, impressed by his careful planning. "You anticipate everything," she said. "It is remarkable," Elias shrugged lightly. "It comes with practice and observation. You notice details others might miss, and I use what I learn from those details. Together it works." After several hours, the shuttle began its descent toward a plateau overlooking a small settlement. The landing was smooth, and Elias guided Lyra carefully as they exited the shuttle. The air here was fresher, less heavy than the forest, and the sounds of life, distant conversations, animals, and machinery were grounding. Lyra inhaled deeply, taking in the new environment. "This is unfamiliar," she said quietly, "but safe." Elias nodded. "We'll take it one step at a time. No rush, no pressure, just steady progress." They moved cautiously through the settlement, careful not to attract unnecessary attention. Lyra's silver eyes caught the subtle details of the human-built environment, paths, structures, and patterns of activity. Elias watched her closely, aware that she was learning quickly. "You adapt fast," he said. "That will serve you well here." She smiled faintly. "Humans, you adapt, but you also anticipate. That combination is rare among those I have encountered." As they walked, they encountered friendly locals who offered assistance. Elias explained their situation briefly, careful to maintain privacy and safety. Lyra observed the interaction silently, noting the kindness and willingness of humans to help strangers in need. It was a lesson in itself, one that she had rarely experienced in her own civilization, where caution and suspicion were the norms. Eventually, they reached a small safe house prepared for travelers and refugees. Elias led Lyra inside, ensuring the doors were secure and the area comfortable. Lyra sank into a soft chair, finally allowing herself to relax fully. "I never imagined this," she said softly, her voice carrying a mixture of relief and gratitude. "To feel safe, to not fear pursuit, to have someone I can trust completely." Elias smiled. "That is the value of trust, patience, and cooperation. You don't have to face danger alone anymore." Over the next few days, Lyra adjusted to her new environment. She explored cautiously, guided by Elias' knowledge of human customs and city life. He taught her about local systems, how to acquire supplies, navigate public spaces, and communicate with locals without drawing unnecessary attention. In turn, Lyra shared knowledge of her own world, explaining advanced observation techniques and insights into natural environments. Their mutual teaching strengthened their bond further, blending human ingenuity with alien precision. One afternoon, while walking through a quiet park, Lyra turned to Elias. "I never thought I would learn to trust a human," she said softly. "Yet here I am, relying on you, depending on you, and not fearing the consequences." Elias regarded her calmly. "Trust is earned, not given," he said, "and you have shown that patience and careful observation can lead to trust in return. We did this together." She nodded, the corners of her mouth lifting in a rare, genuine smile. Lyra's pursuers, who had once threatened her safety, had not followed her beyond the forest. Elias' careful planning, combined with their strategic use of natural cover and signals, had kept them hidden. They were free now, able to move through the city without fear. Lyra observed the human population with fascination, noting their adaptability, resilience, and willingness to cooperate. She realized that humans were not only strong and inventive, but capable of empathy and understanding in ways her civilization rarely practiced. One evening, as they rested in the safe house, Elias prepared a simple meal. Lyra watched, intrigued by the process. "Your species finds comfort in simplicity," she said thoughtfully. "A small meal shared quietly, yet it brings warmth and strength." Elias nodded. "It's about connection, Sharing food, conversation, and care strengthens bonds, whether on a dangerous planet or in a safe city. Lyra considered this, her eyes reflecting the soft glow of the room. "Perhaps this is why your species survives in so many worlds," she said quietly. "You combine strength with understanding, persistence with care." As the days passed, Lyra grew more comfortable with her surroundings. She learned to navigate streets, interact with locals, and move with confidence through human spaces. Elias remained close, guiding her when needed, yet allowing her independence. Their partnership had evolved into a deep, mutual respect and trust, a bond forged through shared challenges, careful planning, and empathy. One morning, Elias suggested they visit a nearby academy where Lyra could safely share her knowledge and learn more about human science and technology. She agreed, cautious but curious. As they entered the building, she was struck by the diversity of thought and collaboration she observed. Humans of different backgrounds worked together, sharing ideas, solving problems, and learning from one another. Lyra marveled at the way humans combined creativity, logic, and empathy to achieve results. Elias guided her through the academy, introducing her to scholars and engineers who were eager to learn from her experience. She shared insights into observation, precision, and environmental awareness, while also absorbing human methods of problem-solving and innovation. The exchange was seamless, and she realized that humans, though different from her species, were capable of remarkable adaptability and cooperation. As they walked through the campus, Lyra turned to Elias. "I have learned much from your people," she said softly. "Not only their methods, but their ways of thinking, their compassion and patience. I did not expect this." Elias smiled. "Humans are full of surprises. They are strong, adaptable, and capable of understanding beyond instinct. They learn from experience, from one another, and from those willing to teach." Lyra nodded, a sense of gratitude and respect evident in her eyes. "You have shown me the value of patience, care, and trust," she said, "and I am grateful. Not just for your skill, but for your heart." Elias' expression softened. "That is what makes humans human. We may be imperfect, but we strive to care, to understand, and to protect." Over the following weeks, Lyra integrated more fully into the human environment. She continued to recover physically, but also grew emotionally, learning to rely on others without fear. Elias remained a steady presence, guiding her, supporting her, and sharing in her discoveries. Their partnership was no longer just survival, it was collaboration, friendship, and mutual respect. One evening, as they walked through a quiet garden illuminated by soft lights, Lyra spoke quietly. "I never imagined I would find a human like you," she said. "One who combines strength, patience, and care. One who earns trust rather than demanding it." Elias smiled. "I never imagined I would meet an alien like you either," he replied. "One who teaches me precision, observation, and insight beyond my experience. Together we are stronger." She looked at him, her expression soft and sincere. "Then we have learned from each other," she said, "and perhaps that is what makes this experience truly remarkable." Elias nodded, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. "Yes. Together, we have turned a journey of survival into a journey of understanding, trust, and growth." As night settled over the city, Elias and Lyra sat quietly, reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. From the dense forest to the safe streets, from fear and uncertainty to trust and collaboration, they had faced challenges and overcome them through ingenuity, patience, and empathy. They had proven that strength was not just physical, that trust could be earned even across worlds, and that understanding and compassion were as vital as skill and resilience. Lyra turned to Elias, her silver eyes reflecting the soft glow of the lights. "Careful brute," she said softly, a faint smile playing on her lips. "Do not think your strength alone has brought us here." Elias chuckled. "I am always careful," he replied. "But it is true, we succeeded because we worked together, trusted each other, and learned from one another." For the first time since their journey began, Lyra felt completely safe. She had found not just a protector, but a partner, a teacher, and a friend. Elias had found someone who challenged him, taught him patience, and showed him the value of precision and observation beyond human instincts. Together, they had navigated a dangerous world, overcome uncertainty, and emerged stronger, wiser, and united in trust. As the city lights shimmered around them and the night sky stretched endlessly above, both felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. Their journey had been one of survival, learning, and growth, but more importantly, it had been a journey of connection. Two beings from different worlds, different experiences, and different expectations had discovered something universal: that patience, care, trust, and understanding could overcome fear, uncertainty, and even the most difficult challenges. And in that shared understanding, Elias and Lyra knew that no matter what worlds lay ahead, no matter what challenges arose, they would face them together, careful, patient, and united in purpose. The forest behind them was no longer a threat. It was a memory of lessons learned, of trust earned, and of a bond that would endure far beyond the challenges they had faced. The journey had ended, but their partnership, and the lessons of humanity, empathy, and ingenuity, would continue, stronger and brighter than ever before.